Boo! Happy October, everybody!
Yay, it's spooky season.
Did I scare you?
It scared me. It startled me.
Welcome to Historia, the podcast.
Yay, I'm Jamie.
I'm Kylie.
And we are doing spooky season stuff. But
we are.
I guess I didn't get the memo.
Yeah, come on, Jamie. Gosh. No, it's okay. It's okay.
I feel like for Halloween stuff, there's so much that you can do for like crime related stuff.
Yeah.
But also like for me, I'm like, what else can I do that's like historical type stuff for like Halloween?
Yeah.
And I couldn't come up with anything. But then I got like inspiration of something.
I was just going for haunted stuff. I'm like, that's good enough, right? Halloween. So, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll be fine. It's spooky season. We'll be, having a couple episodes coming out that are spooky. And for now, Jamie's just going to entertain us with a long story that I don't know what she's talking about.
Yay. It's going to be fun. I am very into this topic, so.
Oh.
Yes. So, let's just jump right in because this is going to be long.
Yeah, let's just dive on in.
These next couple weeks are going to be pretty long compared to some of my other ones, so let's just jump on in. So the topic I will be discussing is, if not one of the most well-known stories, or mostly person, in the world. So before we get into the logistics of everything, let me tell you a story that started it all.
Why am I nervous? Okay.
Don't look.
I want to know. I have bad vision. I can't read your notes from here.
The year is 1922, November 26th to be exact.
Okay.
An English Egyptologist by the name of Howard Carter is at the Valley of the Kings in Egypt, waiting to uncover a mystery that has been kept for over 3,000 years. At the bottom of the stairs, a wall embellished Egyptian carved seals and cartouches with the name spelled out in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, Tutankhamun. Getting through the hallway, they came to another wall. With an iron rod, Carter chiseled a hole into the wall large enough to stick his arm and candle through. At first, it was too dark to tell what was in the room that released air that has been kept for 3,000 years. Moving the candle over, it all came into view. First, speculation was gold. The room was covered in gold. Carter could not believe his eyes on what he had found. When he was then asked if he could see anything, Carter replied, "Yes, it is wonderful." Howard Carter had found the tomb of the young pharaoh Tutankhamun. If you are not aware by now, the next couple weeks we are going to be discussing the famous and mysterious pharaoh Tutankhamun.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That was a fun intro.
Did you have any clue? Do you know who I'm talking about?
I've heard of the pharaoh, but I don't know much. So,
oh.
Yeah. You're going to be teaching me a lot.
Yeah, he's actually probably, if not the most famous pharaoh.
Yeah.
For this reason.
That's the thing. Like, I've heard of his name all the time.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know much about him. So, or really anything, honestly, except he's a pharaoh.
Yes. So I watched a lot of documentaries on this one. And I loved every minute of it. I watched so much for the last like 2 or 3 weeks. Ooh. Of just doing it. Because there's quite a bit on him that they're finding because he's quite famous. So I watched King Tut in color, which is on Disney Plus, as well as Tut's Treasures, Hidden Secrets. And literature I used was the Encyclopedia of Ancient Egypt by Helen Strudrick. I also used The Rise and Fall of Ancient Egypt by Toby Wilkinson.
Okay.
Which I've used before, but there's so much. So I had a fun. So this week I am going to be covering Howard Carter's discovery of Tutankhamun and the legend of the curse.
Ooh.
There's really not much to it. So to get started, let's introduce how Howard Carter got to where he would be as one of the most famous Egyptologists in history. In 1891, at the age of 17, Carter at the time was an artist and was given the opportunity of a lifetime. he was asked to go to Egypt as an artist at this time to visualize the artwork in the walls of temples and tombs. So pretty much his job was to go to these temples that are around Egypt, like ancient Egypt areas, and he would pretty much like freehand paint and draw visuals that he would see on the walls and give them like color so you could actually see what they would look like.
Okay.
Like originally. So that was his initial job for when he would go. So at this time, Carter did not have the fascination that was to come of ancient Egypt. He didn't really know much about it. He got an opportunity and he was like, sure, why not? But it was a unique experience that he was excited to see. I mean, you're going from England all the way to Egypt. That's pretty legit.
Oh, yeah.
Especially at the age of 17. Like, damn.
Oh, damn.
So he would go to Egypt and begin his work painting freehand of the carvings on the wall. One that was shown in my research was of the god Horus in his bird form. This painting was gorgeous. It was in one of the documentaries I was watching they were going through all of his artwork and previous maps of the tomb and some of his like diary and entry logs and stuff. And they had his specific painting that he drew of Horus, and it's gorgeous. Like, he was a very talented artist when it comes to recreating these visuals.
That seems hard to do anyway.
Yeah, especially to freehand it.
Yeah.
So over the next few years, Carter grew with his profession and became the Inspector General of Monuments in Upper Egypt, and then in 1903 would be the Inspector General of Lower Egypt. So in this time, Carter would fall in love with ancient Egypt and decided to further his education to become an Egyptologist/archaeologist. He was like, I love this way too much. I want to start doing research on these pharaohs, of just the culture. Like, he found a love for it, which I'm sure if you go to Egypt and you see these monuments and these temples and just the artwork, you will fall in love with it just as much as he did. It's amazing. So it would be in the next 10 years that Carter would grow as an Egyptologist. Known for his stubbornness and temper, it often got Carter into trouble. And eventually he was let go of that job as the general inspector. He then decided to focus more on his research and the possibility of finding something great. I mean, that's every researcher, Egyptologist, archaeologist's dream. They want to find something that they will be known for. Mm-hmm. They're still doing it to this day.
Otherwise, you fail, quote unquote,
Yeah.
with the job. Like, you have to have something.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be like a pharaoh or someone great. Like, it could just be something to help people learn more about the culture.
Yeah.
In general, of just like how to, like, some of the archaeologists in Egypt during their seasons, they will try to search for stuff that represent the poor people, just the local people of Egypt in ancient Egypt, to better understand how did they function too. It was more than just the pharaohs.
Yeah.
It was the people too that helped them get to where they were. So
true.
That's pretty cool. So it is during his research of revising and searching the meanings on temples and monuments that Carter stumbles upon lists and depictions of different pharaohs of Egypt. They call this the King's List. So it has pretty much all of the pharaohs in Egypt on lists. Like, it pretty much has their name in hieroglyphs.
Okay.
Of just the different time frames. Like, it would go by each pharaoh in the list. And it wasn't specifically on the King's List that he found Tutt. It was just like randomly on temples. He started to run into this name. He was like, what the hell? Who is this? Because at this point, many of the pharaohs' tombs have been discovered in the Valley of the Kings, and the discoveries were starting to become exhausted there.
Yeah.
Like, you had found most of the pharaohs that you could, and a lot of those tombs had been robbed. And there was nothing in there really, which was a very common thing. They're still running into that. Like, almost every single tomb that they have found so far has been empty.
Wow.
Pretty much empty, because tomb raiders, robbers of that time period or another time period have broken in knowing where it was located, and has stolen those grave goods.
That's wild.
Yeah. So this has been going on since antiquity. So
Still something else, you know?
Yeah. And then they get rid of the body because they think it's cursed, that they will be cursed from stealing from them. So they'll burn the mummies and then we have nothing to go off of.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So common thing always happens. Sometimes we get lucky though, and we find the mummies of the pharaohs. So
yeah.
like
once in a while.
Yeah. Hatshepsut they found.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a girl.
Hattie.
So this didn't stop Carter in believing that there was still more out there to be found. He was like, we found a lot, but there's so much history to this that we need to know that we can still find. Like he was very dedicated into his research. So while reviewing many of the temples, especially in Luxor, Carter came across a name several times that left him curious. This name was Tutankhamun. By the lack of monuments and statues of his name, Carter did come to find that this mysterious character was once a pharaoh of Egypt. Because, just a little side note, if you are not familiar with ancient Egypt, is that when you became a pharaoh, throughout your whole reign, you were constantly building. You were building temples for yourself. You were building obelisks, which are giant, like just diamond triangular shaped things that you would have like your story, like propaganda. You would have your campaign information that just your name was plastered everywhere. And sometimes they even went over old writing and put their stuff into it. Like they were constantly doing this. And that was a common thing that you would do during your pharaohship, during your reign. And when Carter ran into Tutankhamun's, he was just like, okay, this guy is like appearing on very few stuff and is saying that he was a pharaoh. And this kind of left him curious. He was just like, who is this guy? Like he's not on the king's list, which I will come into later on. But yeah, this guy wasn't on the king's list. So he was like, who was he and what time frame is he pharaoh?
Ooh,
like it left him
mystery.
Curious. Yeah, it was very mysterious. And this is what intrigued him. He was like, I have to find this guy. Like, this is awesome. So this would become his life mission to try and find him, which good for him.
Love that.
So the only way that Carter could make this a reality was to have the financial background to do it. So the backing of the financial part of it, because it's not cheap to do these things.
Yeah.
Like you have to get a team together. You have to pay them. It's not slave labor. And just being able to do it every month, he had to have some sort of sponsorship. So in 1907, Carter would go on to meet his future bestie, Lord Carnarvon. So Carnarvon spent his winters in Egypt where he met Carter. The two really hit it off, and they had a lot in common. Their love for Egypt expanded to the eventual partnership in future expeditions. Carnarvon wanted to find something great and memorable in history. His goal was to find and enact tomb, which was super rare at this time because you were not going to really find one. It just was not going to happen. So these guys were just like holding hands, just skipping down the Valley of the Kings, like, oh my God, we can find something fun. Besties.
Skipping down.
But there was no way that he was going to be able to do the workload of digging, excavating. Carnarvon, because he was like in his mid-50s at this point.
Yeah.
So when he and Carter got together, Carnarvon would go on to hire Carter to do the excavations. He was like, hey, you are really interested in this. Like, what if you go do it? And Carter was like, that's exactly what I was hoping for. He would then bring his research and ideas to Carnarvon in the Valley of the Kings that there may be a king waiting to be found. So he brought up to Carnarvon, he was like, hey, I have been searching through Luxor and these other temples, and I have found this name that is not on a lot, but it's saying that he's a pharaoh. And I think because of like the time frame that he was putting together in the new kingdom, he was like, I think he may be in the Valley of the Kings. And Carnarvon was like, okay, this is interesting. Tell me more. And so Carter pretty much lashed out, just kind of spat all of he knew of this. And he was like, I think I know a general area of where he could be. And Carnarvon accepted. And Carter was off to do his discovery. Carnarvon was like, okay, we will do this. I will financially back you on this. Let's find something great. So Carter first decided that if they were going to find anything deep in the valley, that they would need to go down to the bedrock before moving on to the next section. So this would validate that they dug the section to its possible route. It was a good tracking system. So when they would do their digging, they would get to a point to where they could no longer dig. Like it just wasn't going to be possible or not possible for these ancient Egyptians to do so. And so that is how they would pretty much mark off the sections that they did.
Wow.
It would take so much digging to do this.
It takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it was crazy. It's crazy how they had to do it, but I mean, it is what it is. There was a lot of sand and rock, especially over 3,000 years. There was going to be a lot covered.
I'm just imagining holes when they're like, dig it, no, dig it.
Literally, they break out into song.
Yeah.
Whistle while you work.
I love it.
Oh, God. So Carter was also finding that the possibility of Tutt being here was due to previous findings of the years of artifacts having the name Tutankhamun on them. So they have found like pieces of art, just like ceramics and stuff. It had cartouches. So a cartouche is pretty much the hieroglyphs of his name. And it's like it's bulbous. It kind of looks like a plate or whatever, like a nameplate.
Okay.
And it was like in hieroglyphs. That's pretty much what a cartouche is. But they would find that on like artwork and stuff with the name Tutankhamun. So they're like, that's what gave Carter thinking, okay, maybe he is actually in the Valley of the Kings from the artifacts that we have found before. Carnarvon was like, okay, that's a pretty good idea. I like that. But this was not going to be some walk in the park to find him. Like, it never is to find anything. Like, it's literally just a game of guessing.
Yeah.
So he and his team were going to have to dig around to possibly find this pharaoh. They were going to have to do a lot of digging. It was in 1914 that Carnarvon was convinced of Carter's research and thought about where the pharaoh could be and decided to fund the expedition. The problem that came with this was war. World War I crept up just months after getting the green light and immediately put a stop to the work. The British landed on Egypt's soil and all digs in Egypt had to stop. So, classic war.
Yep, always coming in.
Oh, yeah. So, of course, it's like, what were they going to do? Like, there's going to be, like, bombs being thrown and just, like, gunfights, and they're just, like, in their little holes sticking up. It's like, no, that's not how it works. Even though I'm pretty sure Carter would be like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it.
Keep digging, boys.
Literally. But, of course, like, that's inhumane.
Right. Don't want to get sued. Not again.
It'd be 3 years before anything would let up for Carter and his hope to find the tomb. So it was another 3 years that he just had to sit and twiddle his thumbs just waiting for the war to end so he could just continue his work or actually start his work at this point. So in 1917, Carter would finally get the grantorship to continue his work, which he excitedly started to work up. He was like, hell yeah, I'm ready. Let me get this all sorted out. So Carter would go on to create a map of series of grids that they would uncover one at a time looking for the tomb. They would dig down to bedrock, and if they could not find anything, they would move on to the next grid. So it literally was like a giant map of like a section of Valley of the King that he believed that he could be at. And he literally put like square grids on like the paper, and they would literally go one by one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And they only have like a few months to do this in the season because it was way too hot to do this in the summer because it gets to like over 100 degrees in dry desert. And so they had till November till I think May to do all of this.
My God.
Yeah.
This sounds like a stress stream.
Yeah. And this is literally how it goes right now. Like if you watch, I think Treasures of Ancient Egypt is also on Disney Plus. They go through each like season that you can watch. It's like 8 episodes long, but pretty much they go through, like, each episode has a theme, but pretty much like everybody's rushing to beat the permits that they have
Oh my God.
to try and find something, or they have to wait another year until that November to start up their research again. And like half of them are like, okay, we have to make sure that it's like in good condition to be left, or
That is...
yeah, and
that
then
sounds so stressful.
yeah, and then they have to worry of like, okay, what if this floods?
Oh my God. I would think of that. Shit.
Yeah, so it's just being an Egyptologist, you're under so much stress.
How many hours a
pressure.
day do they work?
I mean, probably from sun up till sundown.
Yeah. Whole shit. All 7 days a week.
Probably.
Yeah.
Just to get it done. So yeah, like 5 months of your life is just consumed with digging
Man.
or helping people dig. Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's a job, but I mean, these people are dedicated to their work, so I give them praise for that.
Yeah.
Many of them
Honestly.
just, yeah, some live on like a boat for most of the year
Wow.
on the Nile.
Woo. Gotta be careful.
Yep. So it was going to take Carter more than just his speculation that he would need to uncover the tomb. It was the help too. Carter would gather a team of a couple hundred men to complete his expedition. He would have men digging the rubble and young boys carrying the sand and the water for them. So you had little like water boys and like little sand boys that would like pretty much take the little buckets that they had of sand and just move them off.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was like a whole chain process. Yeah, and there was a lot of them too.
Wow.
Yeah. So each season, of course, would only last a few months. So for 5 seasons, Carter and his team would dig, but each year they would come up with nothing. So for 5 years, they were just digging in dirt.
Aw.
Carter, though, he was not discouraged as he still had 2 sections left. He was like, I still have these 2 sections. Like, I'm doing fine. Like, it's going to happen. But Carnarvon was not feeling the same way. With the war efforts impacting England, Carnarvon was running short on the flow of funds due to high taxation. And this dude was living in a bougie ass place. Like a nice big castle. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, like not like Buckingham Palace, but
A castle.
a castle. And of course, like that's going to be expensive to heat. So,
True that.
true that. So Carter would beg Carnarvon to help with one more season, to give him one more chance. He was like, please, bestie, can you please fund this last one? I swear if we don't find anything, I will stop asking you for money. And Carnarvon was like, okay, one more expedition. He was like, Carter was like, thanks, daddy.
Oh.
It
Whoa.
was like a sugar daddy.
Okay. Get it.
Get it, boy. So Carter's final season would begin on November 1st, 1922.
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot what year we were in for a second.
We are in 1922 now.
Yes,
it
of
just
course.
keeps going forward.
The war happened, of course.
5 years he didn't find anything. So struggle that would come with clearing the last 2 sections, Carter mapped out would be with the location they were planning to dig at. So in the area was a popular tourist sector with the famous tomb of Ramses VI. This meant that Carter and his team would have to be extra cautious and careful while digging. So of course after clearing out like a tomb and stuff, and they make it like prepared, and people would do like tourism spots and go into like the tomb and like visit and stuff. Like it was Egypt was a huge tourist spot in like the 20s, which was interesting. Yeah. But so they couldn't really like be too like just swinging everything around, because sand and rock is probably going to be thrown onto people and they're not going to be happy about that. But of course, like this pissed Carter off. He was like, these fucking people, like I'm just trying to do my job and they're just visiting. Like I don't blame them.
Yeah.
So it would be on November 6th that during a day of excavating, a known story is that a water boy by the name of Hussein Abdul Razul would dig a hole to put his water pot in to rest. While digging, Hussein would hit something hard, which was an indication that something was there. He would go to Carter and those in charge about what he found. Carter and his team were immediately on the location site that the child directed and started to dig from there. They were like, this is something. So pretty quickly, they came across stairs that led downwards. This excited Carter as he progressed further until he came to a wall. So they just started their dig, and they came to a wall. Now, this wall held everything he was searching for. Oval seals were covered over the wall, a depiction that a pharaoh was buried there. On the wall were cartouches that spelled the name Tutankhamun.
Oh, wow.
He was probably fangirling at this moment. He was like, fuck, yeah, I found it. I
probably
knew
went into
it.
shock.
Yes. So in excitement, Carter telegrammed Carnarvon on his discovery. He was like,
Telegram.
Daddy, I found him.
Telegrammed. Oh.
Beep, 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 beep,
Wow. He's like all excited. He's
Morse
like,
code.
Beep, 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 beep. Just taking forever.
So Carnarvon and his daughter Evelyn were so excited, and they would hop on the next boat to Egypt. They're like, oh, we're going to be there as soon as possible. Don't you worry. So while waiting for Carnarvon to arrive, Carter was excited, and he was like, I'm going to explore more. We're going to find stuff. So he and his team started knocking that wall down. But they noticed that on the left side of the wall, there was patchwork done. So this confirmed that the wall had been resealed. Now, this means that tomb robbers have stepped foot in the tomb before.
Oh.
Yeah, so this was pretty discouraging that there was a possibility that nothing could be in the tomb. But Carter was like, I am not going to be discouraged. It's still a really awesome find to find another tomb in the Valley of the Kings. And he pushed on. So unsealing the wall, Carter and his team came to find that there was a passageway filled with rubble. He was like, whoa, this thing like crashed down, collided. So they had to remove all of this rubble
Oh my God.
in this passageway and secure pretty much the passage, make sure that it was standing up, that none of the rock would fly down on them. So they had to make sure that there was like enough barrier or that it was strong enough that the rock wouldn't come down on them.
Oh, yeah.
So that takes a little bit of time. And Carter revealed that there was another wall that he came to, and he's like, this could very well lead us to a room. He was very excited about this. He was like, oh, hell yeah. And it had more of like the seals and stuff and like the cartouches. He was like, this is it. This is it. So by this time, it was the 26th of November, and Carter was ready to break into the next room. With his iron rod and candle in hand, Carter revealed the marvelous surprise just on the other side. Before this day, no one of this time had ever seen an intact tomb before. Wow, that is really hard to say.
An intact.
Intact tomb.
An intact tomb.
So in the room alone were wonders that surprised everyone involved. Hundreds of photos would be shot in this room alone to capture what they found. On the left side of the room, there were 4 broken down wooden chariots coated in gold, colored glass, and stone. Even on the chariots, there were spectacular battle scenes and engraved messages. Like it had like the gold plate that was like over the wood was like all carved and stuff like that. And it had like writing and whatnot. It's crazy. And of course, like when exposed to air, it started to like chip off, but they kept it all, and he just put it in like a big bag or bucket or something. And someone's job literally right around like when they were bringing out like all of his stuff to put in like a new museum. One guy's job was to put all of these together.
Oh, shit.
To find these meanings. Yeah, it's crazy. Shit. I felt so bad.
That is a stress dream as well.
What a job, though. That's just how you spend your 8-hour workday, is just putting together.
It's like you're doing a puzzle.
Literally.
Oh.
It literally is putting a puzzle
I'd rather
together.
do that than dig, honestly.
But yeah. It would be cool to be like a digger, though, because you could very well just stumble upon something.
That's true.
Like these Egyptologists are the ones who like technically find it, but technically it's the person who was digging that found it.
Yeah.
So it's like a team effort, I guess. because the Egyptologist knows more about like what they found rather than the person who's just digging it. But the person who dig it is technically the one who discovered it.
Oh, for sure.
But it's a team effort. So behind these chariots was a colored wooden bust of the pharaoh himself. It was colored. It was a wooden bust. It has like his face, eye makeup, and everything. Like they have it on display at the Cairo Museum. So in the center, 3 beds were stacked, all layered with a coat of gold. And on like the posts, they all had like they had a different god.
Oh.
Yeah, one of them I think was a lion god. And then I think another one was a cow.
Okay.
I don't know what the third one was. So underneath these beds were dozens of wooden boxes that would be filled with meats to take to the afterlife. Probably did not smell good opening.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Well, it was probably dust at this point.
Well, yeah, I guess by now.
3,000 years.
Yeah.
So furniture would fill the room, one of which was decorated in ebony and ivory.
Oh.
Yeah,
damn.
bougie. On the other side of the room, there were 2 fairly large wooden statues of the pharaoh. They were a good distance from one another and facing each other, and then it had a blank wall behind it. They still had the paint on the figures, a rich gold color with the blue on like the headdress, and his skin was black to reflect the Nile soil.
Wow.
So everything was still like colored pretty well. I'm sure like they took a lot of precaution to make sure that like as soon as they brought it up that it wasn't just going to go poof.
Yeah.
So there was also the famous chest that on it had a whole battle scene of Tutankhamun fighting his enemies.
Oh my god.
This is a very famous chest that they are doing research on now to like try and navigate of like who was this king. It was all magnificent, but also a bit confusing. For a chamber room, it seemed small to Carter. Compared to other pharaohs, it was small and he expected there to be other rooms connected to have more stuff. There wasn't even a mummy of the pharaoh in this room. He was very confused. So more exploration would have to be done, but this was a start.
Yeah.
So he has probably one of the smallest tombs by far, all of the other pharaohs.
It sounds really cool.
Oh yeah, it looks gorgeous. What they did notice was the furniture knocked over, confirming that robbers had gotten this far. So they're like, okay, they got in at some point. But on first look, there was so many goods left. They're like, what the hell did they take? So while scanning the room, it came to notice from Carter that between the 2 statues of Tutankhamun, that the wall had a slight discoloration. It had been plastered over. This would come to be the resting chamber of the pharaoh Tutankhamun.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. But before Carter could think of going through this wall, he had to clear out the room of all the treasures that were found. So before he could even start exploring into the next room, he had to take all of these treasures that were like filled to the brim in this room to remove them and properly secure them.
I'm just imagining him going back and forth, carrying all this stuff. Oh.
So getting started, Carter would ask archaeologist Arthur Mace and chemist Alfred Lucas to help conserve the objects. Why did he need a chemist? Well, when the objects would be exposed to the air after being in like a concealed tomb for 3,000 years, many started to crack and the paint started to wither off. He needed help to make sure all stayed put together.
Yeah.
To really keep that look of it. Because, I mean, it's paint.
Terracotta Army, we talked about that.
Exactly. It happens.
Used to be colorful.
Mm-hmm. Not anymore. So they wanted to make sure that they could preserve as much as they could of the original color. Because, again, like I said in my previous Ancient Egypt, is that this place was very colorful. Like, they really, really loved their color. Mm-hmm. But, of course, we don't see that because due to the high exposure of the sun and the dry weather, it's going to fade very quickly over time, which happened. But, I mean, their detail work was pretty awesome.
Yeah, whenever you see anything that's, like, Egypt related, it's always just brown.
Yeah.
Brown. It's so sad.
And it's sad because they really were, like, if you look in their tombs, everything was colorful.
Yeah.
And they really loved their colored glass and stonework because it just made it feel so much brighter and special. Like, it was great. So to stabilize the objects from falling apart, a paraffin wax would be coated on the items to keep them together. I was confused too. I was like, why did that come out of my mouth? So from there, the items would be wrapped and stored into crates. These crates would be placed onto railway trucks and sent off to the Cairo Museum. This journey would take 2 days to reach the museum. It would take a total of 2 months for Carter and his team to move all 700 objects to the museum. Oh. So this was in November, like late November. It's now late January. So he only has about like 2 or 3 months left of this season to do anything.
Damn.
Yeah.
Better hurry.
Yeah. So the news of Carter's discovery would expand globally. The world was hurting after the war and the devastation that came from it. But when news broke of Carter's find, the world lightened up to the news. They were like, oh my God, this is great. Oh my, what a find.
What a find.
So an intact tomb was never seen before. And people loved it because photography was becoming a very big thing. It was slapping on all the newspapers. Yeah. People were like, oh my God, we have to see this. Heavy press came along with the find, and endless magazines wanted a piece of the story. They're like, we got to know what happened. Out of the endless magazines wanting the story, Carnarvon decided to give the full story to the London Times. Of course he did, because he's British. Go figure. With this exposure, Egypt had suddenly become the new hotspot to go to on vacations.
Ooh, literally hot.
Literally. Oh my God. I was watching, when I was watching one of the documentaries on it, like after they talked about how Egypt became like a hotspot after the discovery, it was panning like video that they took of just people visiting and stuff. People were literally climbing the steps of the pyramid. What? Because there was no, like, at this time, there was no one being like, oh, we have to preserve this. Like, don't touch the pyramid. These people were just climbing on these. And I'm like, oh my God. I wonder how many people died falling off of
this. that's just risky in itself.
I'm like, these things are so fucking old. And there you have these white people just climbing on top of these rocks.
Get a picture of me with my thumbs up.
Literally.
My hiking boots.
They didn't even have hiking boots. They were literally in like formal attire.
Oh my God.
Or like, I guess casual attire, but it looks formal to me at this point. It was crazy. I was like, oh, as someone who cares deeply of like, do not touch old shit. Yeah. Because you might break it. I know you'll break it. It broke my heart. I was like, what the hell? Why was this acceptable?
That's crazy.
Someone had to have died and they're like, okay, you need to stop.
Yeah.
But not at this point. So the new year would come around, and on February 16th, 1923, it was finally the day that Carter and his team would break down the wall to the unknown chamber. Ooh. I bet he was just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what are we going to find, guys? So chiseling the wall until there was a cloud of smoke. When it all cleared, an amazing sight came into the view for Carter. In this room came to view painted walls with retellings and messages the Egyptians always decorated tombs with. In the center, though, was a massive shrine box, decoratively crafted. Off to an adjacent room, more decorative furniture and objects were discovered. They're like, whoa, this thing is filled. Guarding these objects were 2 Anubis statues. So the little Anubis was one of the gods of death. He pretty much like helped with the transition of like the afterlife, weighing your heart in the feather. And these statues were actually in his dog form. So it was like a little dog, like how the Sphinx lays. It was like 2 big like medium-sized statues of like Anubis as like in his dog form. It was they're pretty legit.
Yeah.
So behind them were countless small boats that would initially guide Tutankhamun to the afterlife. There were also decorative boxes lined up. There were so many. In one of these boxes was a large necklace that had a massive pendant of a scarab on it with smaller scarabs in jeweled glass lined up around it. It was beautiful. It's huge. This pendant of the scarab is massive.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome. So Carter, in excitement, wanted to find out what was in the shrine, hoping that there would be a mummy. On first glance, it appeared the robbers got through the first door, so this made them a little nervous. But with the second shrine intact, so literally they opened the door and they were met with another one. They were like, okay. They saw that the robbers had not gone any further because it was still latched. And so this was like pretty exciting for them. Like, oh my God, they didn't get this far. So it could be suspected that the robbers were got through like the rooms. Someone found them, was like, you need to get out of here, like leave, and pretty much patched up all the walls. And then part of the wall, maybe through like an earthquake or something, part of the wall fell down to where the rubble was in that passageway. And then it was covered up. Okay. So no one else could enter that tomb ever. Okay. So that's an assumption. So there would be 4 shrines that Carter and his team would have to go through before even getting to the sarcophaguses. They're like, I bet that was a lot. Yeah. But it takes a lot. Like, it's going to take a lot to get to the guy.
Get to the prize.
It's literally like one of those Russian dolls like things where you have to keep opening them and it gets smaller and smaller.
Oh my God, that's so true.
It's like that. So, but before he could explore any further, tragedy would strike.
What?
After being bitten by a mosquito and not taking the proper care to make sure that the scab would not get infected, Lord Carnarvon would die due to blood poisoning.
What?
Yeah, like he literally cut himself shaving after getting bit by a mosquito, and he didn't take the proper care of it, and he got blood poisoning and died.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. And of course, like, it's the 1920s, so medicine wasn't like... I mean, there was medicine that he could have taken, but I mean, that probably wasn't the first thing on his head.
So drastic. My God.
Yeah. So morning would fall on to the team and Carter. He lost his bestie.
Aw, his dad, or no, his
daddy.
He was the daddy, so. Oh no, that was his daddy, yeah. I was going to say his son.
So for a time, the excavating would be on pause while everyone properly grieved for the man who made all of it possible. So while Carter and his team mourned, the media had a different outlook on it. Classic media, even in the 1920s, being a bunch of bitches. It had been believed for a millennia, all the way back to ancient Egypt, that if one disturbs the tomb of a pharaoh, a curse would be brought onto those who uncovered the rest. So many robbers would burn the mummy so that there would be nothing to enact the curse. Of course, that was not the goal of Carter and his team. They wanted to find the mummy. From there, the curse of the tomb of Tutankhamun would develop over the next several years. This idea of the curse took off after Lord Carnarvon's death, and over the next decade, more from the team started to die from weird but logical occurrences for the time, or their houses burning down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was suspected that Evelyn, his daughter, like, committed suicide after she was, like, seeing all of these, like, weird deaths of, like, the team members and stuff. And I was like, maybe she just committed suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. They were taking it very seriously because curses were very big at this time, I guess. But
so it is spooky.
Yeah, it is spooky. There is a suspected curse, and I think there was like maybe 9 or 10 that had weird deaths, or like their houses burned down for some reason. And I was like, for one, houses built at this time probably were not great, and the fire codes were not followed. For one, probably had a candle lit and didn't realize that, it can catch easily on fire.
Yeah. Damn.
But, and then like the weird deaths and stuff, they were just like, it was like from diseases or something. And I was like, there was still like a world, like a pandemic going on at this time. Like it didn't just end in 1920 something. Mm-hmm. So it's just, of course, the media wanted to take a different turn on it because they were like, oh my God, all these people are dying, like, who were on the team with Carter. Like, it has to be the curse of Tutankhamun. It's like, sure, let's go with that.
It's the only answer.
Yeah, looking at it now, the curse appears absurd as medicine in the day was lacking. And just the curse, they came up with it and they just ran with it and everybody jumped on board. So time had passed and Carter and his team decided it was time to see if the mummy everyone was hoping for was in his tomb. It would take 4 additional shrines, each decorated beautifully in gold and colored glass before he would get to the first sarcophagus. Now, it was beautifully decorated in a coat of colored glass. They would get to the next. So that was like the first sarcophagus was like this huge, like wooden one, like layered in gold. And then it had these beautiful colored glass on it and just like some stones. Like it was beautifully done. And then it would lead them into another sarcophagus that was made of wood and like plated in gold. And then it would eventually get them to a golden effigy of the pharaoh, which was really gorgeous too. It was, I think it had like the full body of like the pharaoh with the crook and flail, which is gorgeous. But then they would get to like the whole tomb of like to get into the coffins. Now the lid to open this thing weighed about like over a ton.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it took a lot of guys to move this thing. And they were so close. So you had the 4 shrine boxes and then you had the lid of that you would get into the sarcophaguses. And then you would have to go through the sarcophaguses.
Oh my God.
And then get to the coffins. Like it was just layered on
so
top.
much work.
Literally, they spent so much time on this. So, but before they could see into the coffin, they were set on hold because of politics. Elites of the area and elsewhere kept disturbing any movement in the excavation with visitations and constant probing of questions. And as mentioned before, Carter had quite the temper on him. He was not happy about this. He was like, I have had enough of their interruptions. This is getting ridiculous. I just want to find my stuff. I just want to discover this. And you're preventing me from doing so.
Aw, poor guy.
So he got so mad. He decided he just set himself off and he just went on strike by walking out. He was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And of course, the elites were like, oh my God, me.
I thought you were going to say he set himself on fire. I was like,
no.
damn.
No.
Carter.
He was way too dedicated.
Yeah.
No, he walked out. He was like, until you guys get your shit together and I can do my damn job, I'm leaving. And they're like, absolutely. They just got mad about that.
Know your boundaries.
They're like, no. Meh. So he left like right before the season ended. He's like, I'm done. I'm out. You guys figure your shit out. I'll see you next year. So it wouldn't be until a year later that Carter would be welcomed back to finish his job. It would be November 1925 that Carter would finally get to the coffin. So opening the coffin, blocking the body we now know was in the coffin, there was a layer of sheath draped over. Under this was another wood coffin layered in gold.
Oh.
Yeah, so multiple coffins. Literally a Russian doll. So under this was another coffin gilded in gold, but this one had a black resin material over this. And so with this, they actually had to spend time to take proper precaution to get this resin off of it.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're just slowly taking it off, making sure nothing gets broken. So this coffin, they would get then to another coffin, and this would be the final one. This coffin was unlike all the others that they had seen before. This specific coffin was complete solid gold.
Oh.
Not coated, not plated in gold. Complete solid gold. Everyone was speechless. Opening revealed the iconic mask we know today of Tutankhamun.
Oh my God.
Like, I'm sure you've seen it before where it's like that gold mask with the headdress with the blue across it.
I
And
can
then
picture it.
it had the blue eyeliner on him with the blue eyebrows.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen that.
That's Tutankhamun's golden
Damn.
mask. Yeah.
Makeup on fleek.
This thing was solid gold, too. They loved their gold.
Wow.
So a face of a pharaoh looked back at them. They were like,
God.
oh my God. A crook and flail was across his body, as well as jewels, like legit jewels,
Oh, shit.
and goods for the pharaoh to take to his afterlife.
Wow, that's so... Can you imagine just seeing that? God.
I would legit cry.
Yeah.
So while removing the mask, it was difficult to do so because this thing is heavy. This thing is very heavy. So they had to like be careful. And actually, when they were trying to remove it, his chin piece came off. So they had to like glue it back on eventually.
Not his chin.
Yeah. So when they took it off, the face suddenly looked much younger than what they were hoping. They're like, whoa. They're like, this doesn't look like a grown man. This looks like a child almost, like a young man. So this would start to cause questions that started to ask of like, who was this king that they were talking about? Like all Carter really found was that his name was Tutankhamun and that he was a pharaoh in the New Kingdom. But they didn't really know much more from that because there wasn't much of him to go off of.
Wow.
Yeah. So Howard had accomplished fulfilling his dream of finding a great pharaoh of Egypt. Unfortunately, Lord Carnarvon would not get to see that day. But
Recipes.
yeah, R.I.P. So while the infatuation and interest of the pharaoh only rose from here, Carter kept pretty low key until his death of lymphoma in 1939.
Oh.
So, yeah, so technically the curse didn't get him, even though he was the one in charge. So he still had another good over 10 years left of his life. But I think he spent a lot of time after finding Tutankhamun to pretty much log everything, to really look into everything, to make sure everything was properly, like that probably took a few seasons to get through as well.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
So next week we will discuss who this Mysterio pharaoh was and what made him so memorable for ruling only a short time.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm lucky because I get to hear it in like 5 minutes. So
you guys have to wait a week.
yeah. This is so exciting. I love this.
Yeah.
I like how you started with the discovery rather than like saying a story first.
Yeah.
Because it kind of just makes you feel like, oh, I want to know more.
Yeah.
Was he young?
So yeah, next week we will get into pretty much him. It's going to be great.
Wow. I'm excited.
Yeah. Where can you find us?
Well, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok. I think that's all. I lose track. I think that's the only 2 that we really post on now. I mean, sometimes Facebook, but all of it is Historia the Podcast. You can also email us at historiathepodcast@gmail.com. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you guys gone to Egypt and have you seen the new museum of all of Tutankhamun's memorabilia?
Let us know.
Let us know. We're interested. I'm interested mostly.
Yeah, but I'm also very interested. This is exciting. So
yeah, so catch us next week for part 2.
Yay!
So
all right, we'll
see ya.
talk to you then. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.